Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube, and welcome to another episode of Fanalysis, Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. I'm Retty4, this is Evan Never 95.
I solemnly swear I'm up to no good.
This is Jen Soraya 1.
I stand by what I said last year. You would have done well in Slytherin.
And this is Greyjoy 95.
No, it's not.
No, it's not. And this is great.
We're keeping it in.
And this is Greyjoy 91.
Yeah. I'm not used to being introduced last, so that threw me off, and then you get the name wrong. But anyway, it's been a long time for all of us, guys. It's like the first time I've been in one of these since before the holidays, and we're recording this on January 15th, whenever you guys see this.
It truly has been a year since last we recorded. It is a different year.
Boy.
I stand by what I said last year.
But anyway, lead us in with the
Anyway, this is chapter
Had to do it.
12? Yeah,
12,
chapter
yeah.
12.
Chapter 12.
Polyjuice potion. I'm not going to tell you what it's about. It's kind of self-explanatory, and we have limited time tonight, so let's go ahead and get into this.
Roger. Opening up with Harry being impressed by Dumbledore's office. This is the first time we get to see another one of those staple, iconic kind of scene settings for the series.
I really like in the prose how Harry immediately recognizes it as like very interesting and also very comforting. And what it actually reminds me of, because we're just coming off reviewing Revenge of the Sith, how Matthew Stover describes Yoda's chamber as like inhaling serenity.
Yeah, no, it's a very. This is kind of the Ravenclaw Gryffindor's room. You know, this is the kind of room you expect the types of people that get into Dumbledore's caliber of magic to be kind of just suffusing their space with, because you're seeing all these interesting magical devices that some of them come up later on in the series, obviously some more than others. You've got the introduction of Fawkes in the corner. You've got the return to the Sorting Hat, which is the next kind of stage in the scene. It's a brilliant kind of. Again, it's one of those snapshot moments for the book. You know, we get a lot more familiar with this space later, but it's a nice little introduction to kind of show you the tidbits that will be coming up moving forward very quickly.
I will say this is also one of my favorite sets in the films.
Yes,
Oh,
yes,
yeah,
very
set
well
in the
realized
movie
on the film.
It's just one of my favorite little details of the set in the film is that they took the original description from the novel, but just kind of went wild with it. Instead of just being a basic circular office, it's like, okay, it's a 4-leveled office. It's got a little basement level down behind Dumbledore's desk. It's got an overlooking balcony and another balcony above that.
And yet no instruments with smoke.
Yeah, I wonder why. But yeah, no,
that might have been a little annoying.
It was a very well realized set, that one, definitely. It's one of my favorites, and one of the more consistent as well throughout the films, if I recall correctly anyway. But yeah,
so
Harry tries on the
Sorting Hat.
He basically asks, the Sorting Hat basically reads his mind. It's like, you were wondering if I put you in the right house. You were difficult to place, but I stand by what I said last year. You would have done well in Slytherin. And
it does nothing to kind
of
of calm his fears or concerns on the subject.
At the same time, I can't deny that the Sorting Hat was right. Because, yeah, would Harry have been the best fit for Slytherin? No. But would he have done well there? Yes. Because at the end of the day, even if he doesn't have the lust for social status and prestige, he still has the desire to prove himself as worthy. He still does have that little kernel of ambition inside of him. Now, what would have happened to him if he had become part of Slytherin House is the question here, because it probably would have ended up really enabling that fragment of Voldemort's soul inside of him. And you know, that is an interesting question. What would have happened if that fragment of Voldemort's soul inside Harry had actually been fed? And, you know,
could have been to some very literal dark places.
I've always found the idea of him being in Slytherin kind of, because to me, he wouldn't function in it. You know, he's so lacking in the kind of personal ambition required to kind of flourish in that setting that I don't know. I can't see his.
He's always been ambitious.
He's very driven.
He's always had drive.
He's very driven, but he's not really ambitious in the sense of I want to climb any particular ladder. It's just a case of I want to prove myself. It's far more a Gryffindor trait than a Slytherin one in how it manifests in him, at least for me. I just don't see him fitting anywhere in Slytherin personally. Certainly his negative traits kind of could fit in that environment, but his negative traits come out in fits and bursts. They're not a through line of his character. At least not by my estimation.
I think Slytherin got slighted when it comes to like, putting their talents to use in this series in general. So like on paper, I see what the idea is, that like his ambitions or his drive can like take him to where that house, would take him. But yeah, there's not really like that ideal Slytherin. We've talked about that before, Callum. Like I don't know if in these, but
we have
they're missing a representative like in these books for me that would have been like a parallel like to what they're talking about, or like the suggestion.
Yeah, absolutely.
The funny thing is, I was actually reading a little fan opinion piece on the interweb some time ago. I don't even remember who wrote it, but the topic I found interesting. This is jumping ahead to Goblet of Fire, but this person was saying Goblet of Fire would have been better if the legitimate Hogwarts champion, instead of being Cedric Diggory, had been a Slytherin student, and the whole story would just play out as it did and still end with this character being killed by Voldemort, because it would actually serve to alienate most of the mainstream Slytherin house from Voldemort, because they kind of realize that we're not going to get special treatment just because we're Slytherins. Voldemort's an asshole.
That could have worked. That could have been an interesting story.
I'm thoroughly against the idea of that little bit of glory from Hufflepuff being taken. I'm totally against that.
I wouldn't want it at expense of the Hufflepuff house, of course, but the actual idea by itself in a vacuum does work for me. But I agree more specifically with the sorry, Connor, go on.
Well, think about it this way as well, though. This character could have been a chance to present a positive Slytherin archetype. A guy
I'm asking for that, but you can have that anywhere. Like, that's what I thought they were going to turn Malfoy into, but they didn't. So
we need a bit more of a Zuko approach to that one. Yeah, we definitely are missing that Slytherin key. The hat gets pulled off, and Harry is treated to the death of Fawkes, panicking that he's going to get blamed for something else going.
Who we now know the exciting origin to.
Oh yeah, we're getting hints towards. Yeah, no, they're just faithful pets. That's it. Moving on. Never need to mention anything else. But yeah, he passes and is reborn from the ashes, as Phoenix are wont to do. And
it distresses Harry.
Yeah, Dumbledore explains that that's perfectly normal and it's all fine, and it's a shame. I like the way he talks about it's a shame that he had to see him on a burning day. He's usually quite beautiful,
just casual.
Rich bloom.
Yeah. Well, I just love the prose where it's like, as he sees the baby, he describes it as just as ugly as it was when it was fully grown.
Yeah, it's funny.
It's probably the same idea as with kitty cats. Like, have you seen a shaved cat? They're ugly and scary as fuck, but a kitty cat with fur is the cutest thing ever. So it's like Fox in the prime of his life.
I mean, there's newborn babies.
Yeah, precisely.
Humans, that are pretty ugly.
Yeah, most any like direct newborns are pretty hideous.
It's
not a pleasant process.
I know.
But Dumbledore asks Harry, after the explanation of what the Phoenixes are and how they kind of work a little bit. He asks Harry if he has anything he wants to tell him, and it's kind of his
Well, no, Hagrid. Don't forget Hagrid.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah. Before that happens,
Hagrid bursts in to try and plead his case to Harry, and he's all, just like in the film, he's all blustering, and he's like, Hagrid, calm down.
Yeah,
yeah.
It's pretty much the same as what's in the film. It's amusing.
It's pretty beat for beat.
And
still. Yeah.
It's very Hagrid, It's almost a direct parallel to what happens with Ron in the next book as well. Funnily enough, it's Harry often gets people charging him to try and kind of get him out of trouble. But it's well-meaning and nice. But yeah, it's irrelevant because, as I said, Dumbledore doesn't believe it. Dumbledore thinks he's fine, as Dumbledore does, because of course he is. But he kind of reaches out to Harry in a way. It kind of says, "Is there anything you want to tell me? Anything at all, Harry, that you might be experiencing that I have theories on?"
I've never understood exactly why he asks this question. Like, what is Dumbledore thinking as he's asking that? It's like, is this a test? Like,
I wasn't sure.
It kind of reads like she was trying to set something up, but then backpedaled on it through the rest of the series. So it just kind of amounted to nothing.
Yeah,
he knows at this point that part of Voldemort lives in Harry, right? Like, he knows that.
Yeah,
that's not something he waits till book 6 to put together. I don't think.
Yeah.
The
other thing I'd like to mention. The other thing is the fact that we know for a fact that I almost said Voldemort, derp, that Dumbledore is an amazingly skilled legilimens and occlumens. And the impression I have is that he was asking this question specifically, almost as a psychological trigger, because he wanted Harry to think about all of those things that he should be telling Dumbledore but didn't want to. He wanted those thoughts racing through Harry's head so that they'd be easier for him to read. He doesn't necessarily need Harry to tell him anything. It's just like, it's basically the same exercise as whatever you do, don't think about elephants. What do you think about?
It's certainly possible, and regardless, it's clearly like Dumbledore trying to probe him for some form of like confirmation of his suspicions, whether it be using legerdemaints or whether it just him using common sense and trying to read Harry's face, because he knows that if anything's happening with the heir to Slytherin, it's probably related to Harry in some way, given what he knows about the piece of his Voldemort's soul. So I agree, Evan. It's kind of
the same question.
Yeah, but it really reads like it was intending to set something up, but just nothing came of it.
It's not like it doesn't work in the vacuum. I mean, obviously it's raising questions, as we've said here.
Yeah.
But it's the fact that
in hindsight, though, it seems weird, though. Like,
yeah,
as it
yeah.
is, it's the first time reading it, it seems it's fine. But it's until you go back to it later that, to me at least, just it's kind of awkward.
Yeah, it's one of those rare instances of how she kind of leaves things hanging and doesn't quite fully wrap it up at the end. It's never really explained exactly what he's doing here.
I think it would play perfectly well if it happened in book 5, given what was going on between them there for this reason. But it's so long between now and there, and he doesn't really honestly suspect Harry, so it's odd.
Yeah, it just stands out.
Kind of a little bit of a loose thread.
Yeah, but anyway, Harry doesn't tell him regardless, and we go back into the kind of transition of the time for the term. Term ends, and we get Christmas rolling in. Always
a lot of students are going away this year because of the attacks, obviously, and I like how it brings up nearly headless Nick again as being a particular trigger, because it's like, okay, if it can harm a ghost, then I'm out.
It's a nice sentiment, actually.
It's
a
nice little huh?
It's a nice little bit of like kind of common logic. You would be terrified if something could kill something that's
something
already
could harm
dead,
something
or
that's
harm
dead.
it,
I mean, that's about as bad as you could get.
It's a nice kind of basic example of just powerful magic just making sense. Yeah, of course, that should be scary.
Just upping the basilisk's threat level.
Before we even know what it is again, because we have not a single hint for what this creature is outside of the obvious thing. Oh, it's probably snake related. There's no confirmation of that yet, so it's a good way of kind of highlighting that threat without it giving away any precise information.
Just out of curiosity, what did you guys think the basilisk was when you first became familiar with the story? Do you have any thoughts?
Well, you mean like before it's revealed that it's a basilisk? Do you mean?
Yeah, like the creature.
Like what the monster?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I really didn't know. Like, I had no idea what was going on. But I mean, there's on our covers, there are snakes all over the place. So I just expected that. I expected those to show up. I didn't know it was a giant snake.
I'm sorry to say that this is the one Harry Potter book where I saw the movie before I read the book. So the fact that the creepy
it shows
hissing,
it in the trailer.
Yeah, and the creepy hissing, well, even ignoring the trailer, within the film itself, that creepy hissing voice coming from the walls, what could that thing be other than some creepy snake monster?
Yeah, it does kind of give it away on that front. Yeah, you're right. But for me, I hadn't worked out ahead of time. I had like a suspicion it was something serpentine related because, heir to Slytherin, it kind of made sense and fit. But there was no, confirmation. Same. It wasn't like it was blaringly obvious from the start, which is good. It's another example of her writing mystery well.
Right. Same here. I suspected a snake, but I wasn't entirely sure, so I kind of. Oh, sorry.
I was actually more confused when they said it was a basilisk until they explained what that was, because I didn't know what that term meant. It's like, oh, it's a what? I was like,
they kind of vary from folklore telling to folklore telling as well. So you wouldn't necessarily know just off the bat from the name. So it kind of it's its own version in the Harry Potter universe as well. But yeah, term ends, Christmas begins. I love Christmas at Hogwarts. It's always wonderful, even as sidelined as it is kind of here, because it's a very brief Christmas this year.
We have the notes. Feast is exquisite as always.
Yes, yeah. And as well, Hermione going into the dormitory, the first sign of the inequality in the dorms, because as we know later on, the boys can't go up in the opposite side. I always find that amusing. It's a nice little social quip.
Indeed.
But the trio plan for the polyjuicing. That's the plan. That's what they're kind of focusing on for this
Ocean is finally
Christmas.
ready.
Ready to roll, and they begin to sort of set their plans in motion post the Christmas dinner. Hermione's kind of laid all the stuff out here, except for one crucial detail that we'll get to in a minute. She's kind of planned for how they're going to get the DNA from, for lack of a better term, from Crabbe and Goyle, which is not particularly difficult.
I really have to say, I'm surprised how little planning they put into like the rest of
Yeah,
the plan, given
I know,
how long
right?
they worked on this potion. We don't even know where their dormitory is.
Yeah, that's
Like,
the
you know,
big
or
one.
their
Yeah, it
common
comes
room.
off as a bit of
You
an
know,
oversight.
do a
Yeah.
little reconnaissance, guys. Like just a
Yeah,
little
you
bit.
could ask
Like you guys
Percy.
had. How
He's
long
a
did this thing
prefect.
brew?
He would know.
Apart from anything else, Harry and Ron have done literally nothing in this entire
They've done
process.
nothing.
Hermione
Like, yeah,
has been
and
brewing
how
the
long has it been
potion
going?
and doing
A
all the
month?
other plans. It's been months. It's been like at least 2 months, I think. And they've just done, oh, we'll wait for it to be ready, then we'll just roll with it. It's like, yeah, this is an example. I mean, not that they're ever particularly good at their plans. I mean, they always go wrong anyway. But
Yeah.
they definitely
This
put,
is a
But you can at least
foreshadowing,
try.
yeah, they put very little effort into this one, and yeah, they kind of stumble through it. If nothing else,
Well,
they burn a hell of a lot of time off looking for it.
Mhm.
I also think the other thing, the reason why they were just so sloppy about this is because they came into this assuming that Malfoy was the heir of Slytherin, and all they were doing was confirming something that they themselves regarded as a known fact. So because of that, they didn't think about it because they didn't think it would be that hard. They had
Well, yeah,
no
that certainly
inkling.
explains
well-
the issue with when they actually get to the common room. But beforehand,
Yeah.
it's just that they were
I
just
think
being
they're
sloppy.
yeah, they're 12 and
Mm.
stupid.
But,
That's why I think it is.
But before we move on to the actual common room scene itself, though, I do want to comment on the actual description of the potion, because the way she talks about the setting of the bathroom scene when they're kind of divvying out the potion and looking at it, and it's bubbling in the different colors, and they move into the different cubicles. I like the way she kind of sets this as like another new experience in the book. There's nothing that kind of is like the Polyjuice potion before or after, for me, in terms of how it's described. Just
Certainly
them
becomes
taking
standard
it.
afterwards.
It's much more interesting in the books than it is in the films, I think, in the way this is
Yeah.
shown. Also worth noting as well, they actually sound like Crabbe and Goyle as they would with their voice boxes.
Right. Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to that
Yeah.
when we get to the transformation. For now, we got the plan for who they're going to turn into. Hermione already has a hair. Well, we assume it's a hair from Bulstrode,
Yeah,
as well as,
as
the
they
robes.
do.
We'll get to
Yeah.
that again. We'll get to that later too.
Yeah,
And basically, they just put a simple sleeping drow into what are they again? Are they cupcakes or?
yeah, just
I don't think it's-
cupcakes. They eat the cupcakes. They get the. It's not a very complicated plan and doesn't need to
Yeah,
take out
just
Crabbe and Goyle.
levitate them and
Mm.
out cold.
But they basically
Yep.
get everything sorted back at the toilets, and they take the potion effectively.
Which is very lovely in how it's described.
Well, just
like,
backpedaling
visually.
for a second, I would like to comment on the scene in the film where Crabbe and Goyle eat the cupcakes, because it's truly hilarious. They just grab them, start digging in. They're just looking at each other like, oh,
It's
no,
very
no.
exaggerated.
It's exactly as
And
described in
then-
the books as well. I mean, it's literally one for one. The two of those.
Out cold.
I've never felt more in sympathy with Malfoy at that moment. He really needs better help than
Yeah.
that. Like, that's really, it really is.
Stooge-like.
Yeah, but at the
It's
same
next
time,
level stupid. You know?
but at the
You're
same
doing.
time, you got to consider what Malfoy himself probably wants in his quote
Not
unquote
that.
friends.
Not that, sir.
I,
Mm.
yeah, I doubt it's that.
Absolutely not. But yeah, it all
Stupid
culminates.
people are easy to control.
Yeah, but all culminates in them actually taking the potion back at the toilet. They come out the cubicles, their voices change as they would be with the voice
Yes.
boxes having changed.
That's like the most significant differential from the films.
Yeah,
It's very amusing in the audiobook, I have to say. I like Ron, his voice, the stupid voice, but with Ron sort of lines. It's really funny to listen to.
yeah, they did a good job
Like
with it.
when he meets like Percy, for what are you doing here? And because he's just, to him it's like, oh, it's my meddling older brother, and like to Percy he's like, who's this stupid Slytherin? Like to talk, like he doesn't get it at all.
Yeah.
I love it. It's like an underrated little bit of comedy for me.
And I understand why they didn't do that way in the films, because obviously
Mm.
need to understand
Yeah.
the actors getting across and stuff. It would have been a nice thing for the other actors who play Crabbe and Goyle to kind of sink their teeth into at least. But regardless, either way works. I suppose.
Another thing from the film I want to mention, just a bit where it's like where Malfoy looks at Harry / Goyle and he's like, "Why are you wearing glasses?" Oh, reading.
Yeah.
Reading.
Oh yeah,
I know you can
yeah.
read.
Which it makes more sense as well in the book that he automatically took them off because his eyes didn't need them. That makes a
Yeah.
lot more sense actually.
Mhm.
But it was still a funny scene, especially
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
the ad lib, because that was an ad lib. Tom Felton ad libbed the line, I didn't know you could read.
I did not know that. That's good.
I
To
didn't
know.
know that either.
line.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was a
see,
good
I-
quip, and the way he pulled off his face, about I didn't know you could read. It's like such like weird.
Yeah.
It's almost disgust, even though it's not. It's bizarre, but yeah.
I didn't know.
They kind of stumble around the common room. Obviously, as we said, they went into Percy. They went into Penelope Clearwater as well, because obviously that's why they're down there. It's another little Percy breadcrumb though for the red herring side of things. And Malfoy rescues from him, and they get taken to the Slytherin common room, which is less creepy than they expected, but still pretty like off on the whole, interior
This next
decoration.
sequence is very on the nose in pretty much every way.
We get
We
again
get the password though too.
yes,
blood.
pure blood. Which just classic.
Again, on the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This entire
mean,
scene.
What else would it be? Like if they were gonna like cycle, like evil, just like worthless lout. Like I mean, what would it be like from week to week? Just pure blood all the time.
Yeah, but the actual scene itself with them kind of trying to wheel all the information out of Malfoy. Not that it's particularly difficult. He kind of just hands it to them on a silver platter.
Yeah.
It's
Because he's just so accustomed to Crabbe and Goyle being so stupid that he has to explain everything to them 10 times over every single day because they're just that dumb. So all they have to do is just ask what they want to know, and Malfoy will be like, "Oh, you forgot that. Okay, whatever. Here you go."
you really
Yeah, we
do
get-
feel for him in that regard, because they just like, what's wrong with you
They're
two?
the only-
And even though
They're
they're
the only
being
audience
stupid
that he
and
has. It's very clear that even in Slytherin House, nobody else gives a shit what he's gonna say. It's just these two.
yeah, and
Yeah,
they're not exactly
play
very
to what
receptive.
you got.
The fact that this, even though it does kind of raise a mild eyebrow to start with, the fact that such casual explanations are enough to be like, oh, okay, they're just being particularly stupid today, tells you a lot about what the kind of everyday life he lives. It's it's
Just
really not
being particularly
surprising.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it starts out with Mr. Weasley getting fined the 50 galleons for the car.
Yeah,
which,
another bit of
Malfoy of course revels in. Ron takes pretty hard.
yeah. Ron is
Literally.
terrible at restraining his temper in these kind of situations. But yeah,
He loses his cool quite a few times in this sequence.
yeah, there are a number of times it comes up. But the other thing as well is the 50 galleons. Like, really? That's how are they paying for that? Because we know that they barely have one in in Gringotts. It's another example
It's
of the
just,
economy just not working.
All the money that they save during the year when the kids are at school and they don't have to pay for whatever it is they need because
I mean, a lot less food, so
But they go through the profit kind of discussion. They mention the room under the drawing room in the Malfoy Manor as well, which is the one bit of information they do get from this, really, outside of the 50 years ago thing. He mentions that his father has told him what he could, or a little bit anyway, about the original attack and how it was before his time. And we just get the background details of what little we know the Slytherins at least are aware about the heir of Slytherin. But more importantly, the fact that Malfoy isn't it, which is a surprise to the boys.
Well,
That's
it is-
because they can't see that they're in a book and we're not far enough in for the reveal yet. So they're excused.
Wait, it's not Snape.
I think the other thing is probably just the fact that, well,
Oh
the
my.
prejudice within the setting definitely goes two ways, because a lot of the mainstream wizard community is generally prejudiced against a lot of the hardline old families like the Malfoys, and it just seems it's like, oh, they're an old wizard family who believe in blood purity and hold to that hardcore. Okay, who cares about them? It's like they don't bother actually doing their research on the Malfoys because they don't bother reading up on the Malfoys' actual pedigree to figure out any history about them. I was kind of fascinated when I was reading up on the history on Pottermore and found out that the Malfoys originally came from France, which made perfect sense because Malfoy doesn't sound even remotely British. It's like saying that's a
he
French...
would be French, wouldn't he?
Yeah, like basically an anglicized French
Okay.
actually makes a lot of sense. But yeah, that's the problem. It's like they just assume that all pureblood families are going to be tied to Slytherin in one way or another, but that's just not always the case.
I mean, Malfoy's literally been like crowing about like how great this is, all around the school. So I can see why they would not be giving him the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, or anyone for that matter, given the way there are different bases for prejudice. Some of them are based
I mean,
in reality, some of them are just based in stupidity.
There's a lot of purebloods, and most of them I don't think fall under. I'm sure nobody ever suspected Ernie Macmillan, for example.
Yeah.
Like with good reason. So I don't think it's quite, prejudiced in that way. Like Malfoy's made an obvious target of himself.
The Malfoys in general have made them that kind of target for suspicion. It's
and they're guilty.
Justified prejudice.
Yeah.
They are.
They had a hand in this. His father had a direct hand in this. He didn't realize it. Not really, but he's the reason the diary is at school this year.
The funny thing is now that I think about it, like when all is said and done, like when the whole series is over, is what sort of relationship that Draco Malfoy end up having with his dad after everything that went down? It's like, was there ever a moment where he turned and called his dad out for some of this bullshit?
I imagine so.
One would hope.
Remember that time when like your boss almost like killed everyone and it was kind of your fault? I mean, I'm sure that they've had discussions. They're just happy to like be alive at the end of the story.
Was awkward that year.
Yeah. I mean, it probably been awkward every year. This is the Malfoys we're talking about, but yeah, particularly in that case. The two really do stumble their way through the scene, and eventually the potion begins to wear off. I like the way it's described as such because you see the red. Harry kind of takes note of the reddening of Ron's hair and everything, kind of all of his features returning to full stature, and you have to wonder how aware Malfoy was of the situation at this point when they're leaving the room. He's like, wait, what? He's like, does he catch the fact that they were transforming? Because it's left a little bit vague.
Yeah,
I think otherwise he would have busted them to hell and back. He would have gone straight to
Snape. Most likely in this instance, but he would have had to have proof as well. But also, does he make mention later on in the series?
No,
Polyjuice?
No, he never mentions this. Not this.
I think it says,
comes up.
I think it says Polyjuice Potter. I could have sworn it may have. Yeah,
I think you're having a fever dream. I don't recall that ever.
I don't recall that either. Yeah.
Maybe I'm making.
Maybe it's a video game thing. I don't know.
I know he uses it. For game 3.
Connected to Polyjuice because he steals some. What?
Sorry, the third game it comes up with him using Polyjuice.
Oh, okay. We also don't get that sequence where they run into them as they're getting out of the broom closet and then run away, like in the film.
Yes, yeah.
Is that in the film? I thought. Yeah. I didn't.
It was the extended
that
edition,
was like a deleted scene or something. Okay, that makes sense.
Might have been in the extended edition. I don't know.
Well, as
I
they're
think
leaving,
the extended edition is mostly just deleted scenes added back in.
But yeah, as they're running away and the kind of Malfoy takes note or doesn't of their transformation, as Harry muses, they return to the cupboard, and I love the fact that they put the shoes back. It's like, we're not going to be complete dicks. We're going to leave them in their shoes and then immediately run back off in their socks.
Who would want those? They must smell terrible.
Of course, but it was just a funny detail because it went, that makes sense. Things. Don't deprive them of that, and don't give them a reason to come looking for them afterwards or looking for anything. But regardless, they return the shoes. They leave them for Crabbe and Goyle to wake up to and hopefully not too much of a fuss about. Knowing Crabbe and Goyle, they'll just stumble out of this closet and just kind of be all like, what? What happened? I don't know. Who cares? Moving on. Because they are literally that thick, as we've seen. But yeah, Harry and Ron return to the toilet, not to find Hermione immediately, but to question Hermione as to why she didn't join them.
Yeah, but she doesn't want to... Yeah.
Yeah, understandably, she didn't want to for reasons that are about to be revealed. They open the door, or she opens the door to them, and she is in full cat mode. And Moaning Myrtle is delighting in that, because Moaning Myrtle is a bit of a dick. They take her up to Pomfrey. I love the way that Harry says she never asks too much questions. It's got to be really interesting to be Madame Pomfrey in this school, because how many times has someone been a victim of Fred and George or Quidditch injuries or just something ridiculous that she doesn't even want to ask?
The stories she probably has.
Well, I think the other thing is that there. I think the other thing is that there's actually a very practical reason for not asking questions. It's because she doesn't want to discourage students from coming to her with injuries that they gain through illicit means. Her first priority is giving medical care, not doling out punishment. So she's not going to ask too many questions because she wants to make sure the students come in and receive treatment.
Yeah, no question. That's the real reason. It's just responsibility and also just it's general medical practice to do that. Make sure it's why they put so much authority on doctors to not reveal information to police, for example. It's amusing to think because how many times must have that little rule kind of been useful for the students and weird for her? It's like, oh god, what is it? You're a cat. What? Why? And
Yeah. Of course, I one thing I'm not certain about though, because the Hermione as a cat effect in the movie looked really, really good, but I don't know if they did that with prosthetics or
it was prosthetics.
Really?
Yeah, they had.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they did. They had like a mask thing, right?
Looks like prosthetics. I mean,
yeah,
Yeah.
I'll have to do some research. And
But
maybe
regardless,
I would guess
it
it's
was
both.
effective.
I
Yeah.
would think it's both. Probably
no,
like
could be.
prosthetics touched up with CGI.
That would make sense.
which is how you should use CGI. Use it for touch-ups, not your main effects.
And that's that chapter. We've done about 50 outros to this and failed already, so we're just leaving it there. You've heard our thoughts. I hope you enjoyed them. If you think we've got anything we've missed and want to cover in greater detail, leave it in the comments below and we'll get to it eventually. I am Rutty4 and I still don't have an outro.
Wait till
Mischief
everyone
managed.
finds out you've got a tail.
Mischief managed. Mischief managed.
End this. End this now.
Oh, I already
What is-
ended.
Put us out of our misery.
Christ.
I ended it a long time ago. I know what you're talking about.
Goodbye.